Ooh, aloha, aloha, folks. I'm gonna ask our panelists to turn on their cameras so we can see their beautiful faces, and then we'll start with ho'olauna. I think we will start with Keahi.
Aloha mai kākou. Can you folks hear me? Okay, perfect. Okay, aloha mai kākou. I am so thrilled. I am beyond thrilled to be here. I just wanted to first say mahalo to everybody just being here and just existing collectively. And mahalo for the invite. O wau no ho'i o Keahi nui na kia kua Johnson. He kamawau no I kapala maewa. I kia wawa o mauna kahalawai. Makamalu o maluhia. He haumana lai'o'o. Yeah, lai'o'o, wow. Lai'o'o wau makahala o ka makakua kalani. And currently, I wai'ahuna wau e awamo nei ko kuleana. And e malama nei ko mau kua mo'o. So, oia wale, that's me. And let me just pass it on to Tehina.
Mai ka wekiu o pu'o kona e kunei ma waina o Waimanalo a me kulio o velina me ke aloha aina kako o wauihono o Tehina kaina Kahikina no kulio o Waikiki kona o ahu mai au. I am a queer wahine, identify as she, her, and I'm so thankful to be on this panel and for the invite to speak on Mahu and everything that is our Māhūi. Mahalo nui.
We'll pass it on to Maddalyn.
Aloha, everyone. My name is Maddalyn Sesepasara. I am not Hawaiian, but my children are Samoan Hawaiian. So it's important that I come in the spaces and I support and will always advocate for Mahu folks. I work at Kulana Project, where our focus is working with transgender and non-binary folks. And I am very happy to be here in this space as well. So mahalo.
And Kaliko.
Aloha mai, my name is Kaliko Ayu. I just want to mahalo Kaima, Keawe, and Kanoa for inviting me to speak today. And it was really nice to watch the film kind of collectively. I was born and raised in Colorado and Denver on Cheyenne, Lenape and Arapaho land, and moved back home to Oahu in 2016. And I currently live in Makiki and graduated recently from UH with background or BFA in dance and BA in English. And that's kind of where I'm coming from today. Thank you.
Well, mahalo you folks for being here. This is an exciting time to be queer, but also to be Mahu and our other Pacific modes of relation as well. These conversations, as we saw in the film, were it was difficult, right, to put words to it at that time, and we're at now a place where we've developed language for it. To describe who we are and how we relate to the world and helping people remember that, right? So I just wanted to open it up to you folks, whoever wants to take the baton, if you will, and just share first your thoughts, perhaps the feelings that came about, and yeah, I'll open it up to whoever feels ready to start the conversation. Yeah. Let's see, or I'll call on somebody, like my Kumu vibes.
I can go.
Thank you.
I've actually seen this film maybe 4 times, and I always cry because there's Kili Rachel going on in the background. So I'm always just very emotional, which is a good thing. But I think right towards the end, where Anake, she said, you know, where are those points of change? You know, where can we pinpoint how we change from the past? And for me, that really stuck, because when you can identify where that change was from, or maybe conflict, then you can kind of awaken and become and kind of come up to a higher level of being and understanding, and to move forward and to holomoa. So I'm just always constantly thinking about that. Love the film. I have no words that I can tell you because I just love it. I love it. Yeah, oya wale.
Perhaps Tehina?
I feel like after watching that, it was a Kiko Pau moment. Like there's nothing that really need to be said. But of course, we're here as panelists trying to share mana'o as well. I don't know, there was just so many moments that I had to take notes on and try to remember. But I think the thing that really took away from me is to be Hawaii is to be able to express yourself freely, and however relation, sexuality, gender, whatever it is, we were all pili to each other in a way that aloha there was nothing that mattered but aloha. And I think that within colonization and religion, Christianity, all of these different things, it definitely created a binary for all of us so that we didn't have that same freedom to just aloha, ako aloha mai. Yeah.
Maddalyn, maybe? Do you have any thoughts you'd like to share?
Okay, so I've seen this film so many.
Can I hear you?
Oh.
Oh no, now can. Okay.
Okay. So I've seen this film so many times. There's a lot of folks in this film that I know personally as well. And so watching it again after using this in a lot of our work that we've done in the early 2000s, it's like wow, from when this film was made to where we are at now, it just we've come a long way in other from watching this film. You see four of our in the trans world, in the Mahu world, are four mothers. You saw Kauaiiki, you saw Hina, you saw Ashleana, and you also saw Roxanne Richards dancing with the halau. And these were four amazing, powerful Mahu Wahines that made us understand the word Mahu. For me growing up, I hated the word Mahu because it was used in such a negative term to describe someone like me, and to have them help us understand, and they were working at Lea Nui Nui, part of Ke Ola Mamo, that program. And then when that agency closed down, came Kulana He Mahu, and these four mothers still stayed there. And it was so important for them to be there to help us educate us, to help us understand that Mahu folks have a place. And that took so long, from this film. Just watching this film, I'm just like, the knowledge they gave us throughout all these years, to understand, we need to be proud and know that before we are before Hawaiian folks are Mahu, they are Kanaka Maoli first, and to understand what that means to be Kanaka Maoli and your responsibility as a Kanaka Maoli to the community. That's a beautiful thing because, this is who we are. This is who we was. And it wasn't until the Mauna Kea movement, until we were called up there. Then we realized, everything that we've done throughout all these years, letting people know, letting trans folks know, Mahu folks know that we have a place. It solidified all that work that we've done all these decades. The injustices that trans folks, that Mahu folks have endured all these years. Being up at Mauna Kea was an empowering moment. I'm sorry. I have all these things that's going through my head right now, and being there with our Kanaka Maoli folks and people that were not also Mahu or Hawaiian up there at Mauna Kea, embracing the Mahu folks that came up there to show their respect and to show their love and compassion for our community was beautiful. This is our moment. This is where we knew we have a place, because our kupuna knew that we needed to be there. Our kupuna knew we needed to be in this space, because this is our people, you know? So, you know, I thank our four mothers, because it wasn't for them, all this work that we have been doing, advocating for trans rights for Mahu folks, would not be where we are today. I mean, you know, look, there's now, before this film, when this film was created, there was no protection laws for Mahu folks or trans folks. There was no employment in housing. You know, we never had all of these protection laws. It came after like 2010, and I think even longer, you know what I mean? And it has to do with all these folks, with our four mothers and everyone involved, and understanding that Mahu has a place, and we need to understand that, and we need to welcome our people back. And so just watching this film, I'm just like so blown away, because so much is going through my head, you know, and seeing some of, you know, like Skeeter's mom. I love Skeeter's mom. You know, Skeeter's mom, even though she was such a Christian woman, she always showed us aloha, you know, and that's always the case with Mahu, you know. It's like when a Mahu comes into a room, everyone embraces us. And sometimes the one that is mocking their child is embracing us. And it's, you know, and this is where I learned a learning point for the mom, and as well as, you know, the child, to understand, you know, your mom will come around, and eventually she did, but it took a long time. And, you know, God bless her, she passed away a few years ago. And I love Skeeter, you know. And same thing with Stacy's parents. You know, you heard her saying about her Samoan parents and how they were vicious to her, but in the end, they loved her, you know what I mean? They finally came around. And who was taking care of them at the end was the Mahu person, the Mahu folks, you know? And that's always the case, you know, it's always the Mahu folks that's always taking care of the family, is always taking care of the parents. And it's always been our responsibility. And that's because we know our place, we know our strength and how we can kukua. So I'm gonna stop now because I feel like I'm talking too much, but I'm gonna let everyone share. But yeah, I just have so much that's going on in my head right now watching this film after not watching it for so long. But mahalo. So.
Mahalo, Maddalyn. Thank you for sharing. You know, I love that you're talking about our four mothers, and I love that it's so like empowering. Our four mothers, you know, they're just these mythical beings. I live for it. But also too, it's just there's parallels with the actual story of Kapai Mahu, right? With these four mothers, and just thinking too about like, you know, the power of Mahu to not only care for, but to heal, right? And also healing this kind of this wound in our Lā Hoʻihoʻi right now, with just this disregard that we've seen, and also the violence against Mahu bodies that happens within our own Lā Hoʻihoʻi as well. And so, you know, thinking about our Mahui being, you know, that healing force, but also the catalyst to push us forward in a direction that incorporates everybody's ea, right, in our Lā Hoʻihoʻi. So thank you for sharing that. And then, sorry, one thing too is, you know, you know these people. These are your ohana too. And for us, you know, in this generation, you know, we didn't have those experiences. It's the work that happened during this time that has, you know, given us that platform now to be expressive again, like Auntie Ku'ume Aloha Gomes is talking about, like be expressive, to be, you know, relational, to touch, like, you know, it's that work that happened that you folks did to make that happen. So thank you for sharing your mana'o. Let's see, anybody, Kaliko, do you have mana'o? Kalamai.
Hi, I think that the most striking thing to me was what has been said already, and just like the whole kind of time capsule of the film, and also being able to see the māhūi that existed before it was something that I was aware of, or that like the communities that I'm in are aware of, because it's integrated and interwoven into who we are as a community, as a māhūi. And so, yeah, going to, or just I guess echoing the four mothers that Maddalyn brought up, it feels like watching this film that, you know, growing up in the diaspora, not having much of a connection that was through action, I guess. It was so in my head and in my body, but not translated yet into action or into being. Hearing and seeing all of the ways in which our Mahu, like this lineage that we come from, of people who have been fighting and existing for, you know, longer than the last 20 years that this film caught. But seeing that, I don't know, watching it made me feel held, like in that film, in that there's always been a place. And then also hearing, I think it was Auntie Ku'umealoha talking about having the kupuna remember what it was like before. And because we, like my generation, doesn't have those memories, it's nice to have this film show us and remind us of those memories that I think they may not be personal, but they're in our bodies. And that we come from all of this hard work that's been put in and all of this survival, but also all of the moments that were captured in the film of times where Mahu people came together and created what the space is and the place for them that was lost, or like as Kumuhina said, we feel was lost, that it really hasn't ever been lost, it's there.
Yeah, I think one of the things that, you know, we view as lost, one of the concepts that we view as lost, and I use quotations, is the concept of ohana, on that we really, in a lot of ways, have not lost that concept of ohana, despite the introduction of the nuclear family system. When we go outside and we run into an elderly, you know, man, woman, we say auntie or uncle. You know, something that doesn't happen in other parts, if not, you know, most parts of the world. You know, when we see other people, other Pacifica people, Samoa and Tongan, and we reference them, we say they are cousins. You know, and in relation to this film, and to your point, Maddalyn, that we still had that, and we still utilize the concept and the power and the magic of ohana by referring to these four fabulous Mahuas mothers. So,
Thank you,
Keawe.
Let's see.
We have a question in the chat.
Yeah, let's open it up. Okay, I see. Okay. From Lealoha, as a queer man who teaches at Kulakaiapuni, one of the most difficult things to process is the line between Christianity and accepting myself as a queer man. Are there any other panelists who are still trying to navigate across the line of identity? Kako'o, you could feel the unity up there. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much, Lealoha. Does anybody want to talk about navigating identity, right? You know, Pacifica, Kanaka, living in our indigenous worlds as well as introduced worlds, and finding value in both places. Are there places, are there, how do we navigate, right, these complex spaces that we feel a sense of connection to, even though they can conflict, and actually can conflict in violence sometimes. I just want to open it up to anyone in the panel to share their thoughts about navigating these worlds. Sorry, that was an intense question. I'll speak really fast and then someone else can just come in. You know, I think that we see in our history, Kanaka embracing both Hawaiian aspects, very traditional indigenous aspects, spiritual practices, as well as operating in a Christian space as well. And sometimes they're able to put on both hats and step into both worlds. And they don't conflict because they're treated as different universes in a sense, right? I think when the political comes into play, sometimes that's where the conflict arises. There doesn't necessarily need to be a conflict, because as indigenous people, we don't have a choice but to live in multiple worlds, right? As people of the Pacific, we don't have that choice to just like be in one or the other. They're constantly relating to each other. So identity, I think, is that pu'uhonua, right? You know, your indigenous identity can be that safe space. This is, I am affirmed in this place as mahu, as queer. Just like, you know, a Christian space can also, you know, offer you wisdoms about the world, you know, lessons in love, lessons in compassion and understanding. So, you know, they don't have to conflict, right? They can exist in their own spaces and be respected in their own spaces. So that's just some mana'o I have on that. Also chime in about anybody else want to move on with this question?
I think just really quickly to piggyback off of what you said too is the concept of consistency versus contradiction. That contradiction in a Western sense can sometimes be viewed as a negative thing. When we know as Indigenous peoples that there can be more than one truth, that it can exist at the same time. My short one on that.
Thank you, Keawe.
Keahi?
Oh, Keahi?
Mahalo lealoha for that very important but difficult question. I was trying to think of what I was doing and what I'm currently doing. What you see today is actually a product of a certain religion group. I was, you know, your number one, I guess, believer, and I've come a long way. I will say that. But to answer your question, the root for me, the root of Christianity would be aloha, or it's supposed to be aloha. And I think we get confused with that. And I think that is what is conflicting, that aloha sometimes is missing from the root cause. Because if it is not aloha, it is not, you know, Christianity, or is not aloha, period. And with that, I think that by navigating with the root of aloha, and as a queer man, or as for me as a mahu, I am able to walk and breathe life because of the root of aloha. I said aloha like 5 times, but obviously your name also le aloha. So that was a little jive in. So yeah, mahalo for the question.
Okay.
Anyone else?
Anybody else?
I like her answer. You know, I think for me personally, being that I am Christian and I am mahu and I know who I am, that's just pretty much me. And I'm tall. I'm a tall mahu, so I know they're gonna clock me. So it's pretty much, this is who I am. You're gonna either accept me or not. And if I don't feel comfortable in that space, I'm gonna go find another space that I do feel comfortable. And I feel comfortable in the church that I am in today. It took me a while to find my home, because I do love Jesus, and I do understand this is the missionary's way, you know, the missionary. And I also respect those that, you know, in the Hawaiian culture, there's Keawe and there's Na'akua, which is multiple gods, or is that correct? You know, and I never knew that. I just learned this like a few months ago because my queen daughter, Stacy, who is a Kumu on the Big Island, she told me, oh, no, I'm not Keako, I'm not Kwa. And I was like, what is that? And so, you know, and so she had to explain it to me. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And she's not the only one. There's a lot. So it's like, you know, we have to embrace our culture and, you know, and then intertwine it to where we feel comfortable with whatever we do or whatever space we're going into. And that's just how I live life. I'm Mahu, I'm a proud Mahu. And as long as you respect me and it doesn't come in a negative way, I'll embrace people calling me Mahu as long as it's respectful. But that's just how I navigate going through Christianity, my Christianity, where my work, being a mother, being, you know, an auntie, being a, you know, a grandmother, no matter what hat I'm wearing, you know, I'm Mahu, you know, I'm Mahu and I'm proud Mahu, and that's just who I am. So, but I love your answer, you know, that's true. It's about love. Love and aloha. Okay.
Okay. One, I love that. One, I'm not Keako, I'm not cool. Right away. I live. Mahalo. Let's see. Oh, chime in. Okay, so please also chime in about your relationship to the word mahu and queer, especially if there have been struggles or learning with fitting in to a label. Oh, that's a great question. So this, I guess, also navigating mahu versus queer versus, you know, kind of different ways of thinking about a similar relation, right? If anybody wants to chime in about that, I think this is a really, really good question. Go ahead, Kaliko.
This question is one that I've been thinking about for a while and comes up kind of in dialogue with a lot of my friends pretty frequently. And for me, I think when I first started understanding my sexuality and my gender, the only language I had was the Western language of, you know, LGBTQ acronym and then queerness. And it was first really hard for me to identify with because it was an identity that I understood at the time that was situated in opposition to the imposed norm. So it didn't feel whole. It felt like it was always adjacent to what the norm is. And how do we build an identity off of that when you're waiting and watching to know where your cue is to fall in line or outside of the line? And for me, when I moved here, I also didn't really understand the full context or meaning of the word mahu, and didn't feel like I had a place to connect with it or understand it in relationship to myself. And it wasn't until, you know, meeting other mahu and having these conversations about what it means and its proximity or differences to queerness is that I understood or felt more like mahu was an identity that had a whole person and a whole embodiment to that identity that was lacking for me in queerness because of my positionality to queerness. And so it's a lot of positionalities, a lot of spatial dynamics in theory, you know, but then when we put it into practice, that's where it kind of loses the context, and where queerness, I felt what does that role look like for me when I'm not always in relationship to something that doesn't define me. And so then being able to walk into and embrace the identity of mahu was to finally see my body as potential and as a spiritual thing that had something to offer, and it wasn't contextualized on just whether or not I was accepted in a framework that doesn't really include me in its imagination, and instead accepted as something and someone that can offer something to the community. That being mahu doesn't I don't know, it's complicated in terms of where queerness is in the way that we understand it culturally right now. I think there's been a move away from contextualizing queerness within its adjacency to the norm, and that we understand that it can be more than just oppositional or resistant, but that we have things like euphoria and things like dreams and visions and imaginations of what could be and what's possible rather than just like survival. But I think for me, the word mahu really aligned me with that understanding of that possibility, because there's a place for it already in the context, in the like traditional context of Kanaka Maoli culture. And so there's roots there, and it's not being built out or off of something that was introduced. So that's kind of, yeah, where I'm at with it. But obviously there's lots, you know, moving and changing always.
Mahalo, mahalo. Does anybody want to add to Kaliko's response?
Or their relationship to the word?
I think I can speak on my own. Kuana Ike of Mahu. I think for me, through my Kuana Ike, the way I see Mahu is more of an identity. So we have Wahine, Kane, and Mahu, Iwaina. And Mahu had their own special kuleana in our Kaiaulu and their ohana. And so as for me, I identify as Wahine, and I don't associate sexuality with Mahu because Ikavaka our kupuna had pilino with everybody, or at least whoever that they wanted to have. And so that's just kind of how I view Mahu. And so I'd love to give space for our Mahu Kanaka that are here. And I think I want to go back to what Maddalyn was saying about identity, how Mahu, your Kanaka Maoli first, or whatever indigenous identity that you identify as. And then on top of that, you could be Mahu, Wahine, Kane, whatever sexuality is. But I love that the kahua was Kanaka Maoli, or your connection to Aina. And so for myself, I kind of grew up, of course, I'm Hawaiʻi, I'm Hawaiian, but growing up within a very white culture, going to a white school, associating with a lot of haole people, I immediately went into this binary of being, okay, hetero, cis, all of these different things that associate with haole identity and haole thinking. But going to Kulanui and finally identifying or finding myself within what it is to be Hawaiʻi and what it is to be Aina and Kanaka Maoli, that's kind of where I found acceptance for myself, that it is okay to be in love with all different types of people, and for myself, wahine, and to identify within that as Kanaka Maoli, because it's beautiful and we shouldn't have such strong rules of what people look like, who people love. And I know I've said that before, but yeah. Oia ihola.
Mahalo, Hina. Sorry, did I miss somebody?
For me, Mahu is beautiful. Mahu is the secret weapon. You know, back in ancient times, you know, we could go to the war and then we could come home and do women duties, you know, be the nurturing mother types and stuff. So that's how I you know, I came to understand that Mahu is a beautiful thing and nothing to be ashamed of. And our people, our Hawaiian folks knew this, you know. I just also learned this a few months ago too. There wasn't Kani and Wahine before. You guys didn't use females and males. You guys had Hawaiian words. Is it Oia? How do you say it? Can you elaborate? I'm not too good.
Yeah.
I don't chop it
Oia.
up.
Yeah, Oia, right?
Yes.
There is no gender, like
No gender.
gender pronouns in the language. Still isn't, right? Of course, we have the word kani and wahine, but when referring to someone, there isn't. Yeah, like you would say Oia. Yeah,
There's no he.
yeah, there's no
Yeah.
he. And well, this is. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No. So to me, it was like mind blowing again. Like, oh my gosh, Kanaka Maoli folks, they were on it. You know, they were smart. You know, they were the ones that leading the trail until the freaking what is that? The foreigners came and made us change our ways. So we must understand that these are our words. These is us, how we describe folks. And we were all respected. Mahu folks were respected folks. You know, we were healers, we were teachers. We had, you know, we had respectful roles in our Hawaiian kingdom. So understanding that, then you understand that we have a place and that, you know, Mahu folks is, you know, beautiful people. And, you know, like I was told, we're the secret weapon. You know, so that's my take on it. All this queer LGBT, that's all Mahu. So that's all I gotta say.
Keahi?
Yeah, mahalo, Tehina and Kaliko and Maddie for your wonderful answers. And I'm still trying to, I'll say this, my relation to Mahu is Mahu itself. Because for me, Mahu means the process of being in transformation. So like Kaliko was saying, it's the movement, it's that change. And it's a process. So it's continually happening. And it can include, but it's not limited to like the physical being, your emotional being, your spiritual being. So yeah, my relation to Mahu is Mahu itself. And I will just leave it at that.
I love the shape shifting. It's very mo'o. I live for it. Yes. So Mahu, being in relationship to Mahu is simply that, a relationship to Mahu, and understanding that Mahu is a transformative mode of being that is constantly moving and shifting and developing and blooming and blossoming. And it's beautiful, like Maddalyn shared. Thank you, Keahi. Kaliko?
Yeah, I just wanted to say another thing that's been kind of circling in my head, and that's for a while now I was reading Jamaica Haoli Osorio's recent work, and she talks about rigorous paraphrase, and that like term has really stuck with me because it takes out the assumption that translation gives us the whole story or the whole meaning. Like when we hear translation, we assume that we're being told word for word, meaning for meaning, what that means, and that's between, you know, like different languages. But I think of that translating into like the difference between queer and Mahu, where it's like, and you know, why, Keahi, your response that like my experience of being Mahu is I really like that, because there isn't a way to really translate it, or even like it sometimes feels like queerness and being Mahu are very different things because they're rigorous paraphrases of one another in some contexts, and in other terms, like Keawe, you said, they're just two different truths and we can hold them both. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. The process, the problem of translation, you're right. Rigorous paraphrase, yeah, Jamaica Haoli Mele Kalani Osorio's work is really important because she's the project really in her work that I've seen is unwriting settler narratives from our mo'olelo, right? So unwriting these binaries, but also like the violence that comes with that language from our mo'olelo, and then telling our story as Kanaka. Rigorous paraphrase, I think is an interpretive, it's an interpretive step in the English language to describe something very complex that can't, without risking adding an violence of language into that description or that paraphrase, if you will. So I think it is a really powerful tool, and I encourage others to definitely use it when working with Hawaiian text in English, right? Thank you for bringing up that work. Mahalo.
Yeah. It also it makes me think about you know, the contrast of certain Western concepts like perfection, and that when you identify as something, you are that for the rest of time. Marriage is supposed to be viewed as this agreement between two people to the rest of time, versus Mahu, as we understand, is an ongoing transformation. I think our I think Olala Hawaiʻi and the way that our kupuna structured society allowed for human beings to be human beings to change, to make a decision one way, that I'm going to be this, and then I'm going to be, you know, this the next day, that it allowed for, that I'm, you know, also going to be with this person for X number of years, and then I'm going to be with the other person for X number of years. But what we did was we allowed humans to be human, you know.
Yeah, and to add on that, ultimately, what people do in their homes is none of your business, babe. You know, like, mahalo. Does anybody else have something to add, or if members of our dear audience wanted to ask more questions, please do so now. What time is it? It's 5:01. We started at 3, so we've been going for an hour straight almost. Maybe we'll do some closing. Oh, sorry, 2 hours. Some closing mana'o. I wish we could keep continuing on this conversation, but some closing mana'o from our panelists. I would love that. We would love her.
Well, I just want to mahalo you folks for inviting me into this space, and how we have advanced throughout all these years, you know, when it comes to mahu and understanding and knowing our place. And it's because of workshops like this, and because of things like this, that we're able to spread the word and let people understand that we have a place. And it's so amazing because we have Kapai Mahu that's happening now at the Bishop Museum. Whoever thought, you know, we would be at Bishop Museum? So I thank Dean Hammer, you know, and Kumu for making this all happen, you know, because it's so important for especially our community. I'm telling all my families, go, you want to understand, go over there. You want to know what Mahu folks, where they come from, go and get a better understanding. I don't have to preach it because I can send them to Bishop Museum to learn, you know what I mean? And that's what I mean, like, we've come so far, and you know, the fact that we're being embraced in all these spaces tells us, you know, that our people, especially our Kanaka Maoli folks, is wanting to learn and wanting to understand that we have a place, and how can they kokua and help and make our livelihood a lot easier, you know, especially for, you know, my trans folks, you know. So I thank you all for inviting me. I thank you all for this, and it's so amazing to see, especially the young ones coming up and just speaking and, you know, sharing their mana'o on Mahu. So for me as an elder, because I'll be 50 next year, so I really love coming into these spaces, even though I'm like the oldest one here. So so mahalo.
Mahalo.
We have a request from the audience
Oh.
for Kanoa's mana'o.
Oh, Kanoa. Kanoa, your
Oh, yeah.
mana'o.
Okay, well, I have a lot of mana'o that I was just like holding in because I want, you know, the panelists to take the conversation, but well, I'm just on anything.
Yeah, maybe you share a bit of your experience then. Yeah.
So something you were saying, Maddalyn, that was resonating a lot was my interpretations and my perceptions about what Mahu was as a child, you know, and I had only ever known that word as a slur until the short film, the Kapai Mahu short film came out, to be honest, because I had very few resources and mentors that could have helped me understand this language better. So when that film came out, it was really a call to like, oh, maybe I should do some research. Maybe I should learn about what this is. And so I think that through understanding the word Mahu and things everyone else is saying, Keahi and Kaliko, about translation and about understanding the word as itself, I think that understanding the word Mahu from a cultural perspective and not through the lens of the dominant introduced culture, you know, like understanding it from where we come from helped me to understand like, hey, this isn't a bad word, you know, like, and maybe this is something that I identify with. And so it's been a journey since then, you know, to kind of unpack all of that and still breaking down all the internalized transphobia that I have against myself even, you know. It's been a lot, you know, and just having community helps a lot. Having transcestors to look up to, you know, that just can kind of like help us, like Kaliko was saying too, like imagining, you know, what our future could look like and looking to the past and understanding that that is a mode of existence that can be strived towards, you know, where we do feel accepted and honored for our identities. And it's exciting. So yeah, I think another thing I was thinking of too is just traditional family dynamics, you know, like being able to reclaim those things and allowing for community and people that you know, provide safe space for you to also provide that for your keiki, and to allow those influences to just create that just cycle of aloha and cycle of growth that I feel like I've been experiencing since coming to terms with what mahu means to me from a cultural perspective. So yeah, mahalo.
Mahalo,
Yeah.
Kanoa.
Mahalo for sharing.
Thank you for sharing. Okay, thank you. Owaihoʻe. Love these new hua'olelo transcestors, māhūi, love it. Does anyone know where the folks in the movie are now? Left wondering where those speakers, figures, dancers, were these MVP FAF Plus are at. You know, I am not familiar. Anybody, Maddalyn, do you know where these beautiful creatures are now in this documentary? These.
Well, so Coco Chandelier is home right now. His mom is staying with him. We just had a conference, the Native Hawaiian conference, so the mom was there. So I love his mom too. His mom is beautiful. Stacy Jacob is living in Las Vegas. Both her parents have passed away, and it's just amazing to that they at least got closure, and that Stacy could be with her parents as they supported her now, you know, before they left. So who else is in there? Oh, Kumu, you guys already know what Kumu Hina is doing, so I don't even say anything about Kumu Hina. Ashliana is doing, you know, she's doing mental health, so she's still continuing the work. Kauaiiki has, I'm sure most of you have known, know she had passed away a few years ago, and it really hit us, especially my community, our trans folks community. It really hit us hard because she was one of our foremothers, and so. But that's all I know. Oh, and Skater is back in Vegas. I mean, not Vegas, but back in New York. He was here for a few years taking care of his mom because his mom was battling cancer, and unfortunately cancer had taken her. So so he what is that? So he moved back to New York, where that's his happy place. So that's the only ones I know of. I don't know where the rest are. Oh, Linda Brown is still here. She's still terrorizing the stages. So that old lady is still hitting. Yeah, so that's my update on that. But yeah, it was so amazing just watching this film and just like, oh my gosh, Tehina was getting down. Is she here? She's not here. Okay, but yeah, so it was good to see all my mentors, my teachers, my sisters, my brothers, you know, and just, you know, and they're all thriving now, you know, they're all doing amazing, and they're all doing amazing work where they're at now. So
I believe Coco Chandelier also teaches a dance class at UH. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, she did it last year, but I don't know if she's doing it again this year. I haven't heard anything from her. She's always trying to get us showgirls to come and volunteer. She sent me out once and I never went back.
Shuckas.
Okay. Well, mahalo. Last words, mana'o from our panelists. Yeah, mahalo, folks.
Just closing, or maybe not even closing off, just my mana'o to leave with you folks. You know, we're talking about too, like Hoʻihoʻi Ea. And what does ea mean to me? Quite literally, it is the vapor or the breath that we, let's all just take a breath right now. Like Hanu, breathe in and breathe out. We all literally shared ea together. Wow, magic, yeah. But also, when you look at the word mahu with no kako, that also means vapor. Literally what we just did right now, the breath. So the two of them have a pilina together. And when you hoʻihoʻi something, you return something. That is also the transformation. So Lā Hoʻihoʻi Ea Mahu. That's all that I have to say. That's the end of the story.
You are speaking truth. I hear Akea upstairs screaming.
I'm literally screaming like dropping all the knowledge right now.
Mahalo Akea for the background tech. Mahalo nui loa. And then something that I also wanted to say is that we are in a period, we are in a time of change, and I know that you folks can feel it. You can feel this change happening. And last thing, when you know who you are and why you are here, there goes the, okay. When you know who you are and why you are here, you remember a sense of place. Yeah. And you also remember your sense of place. Yeah. So, waiō let me just wipe my tears off screen. But mahalo nui loa for having me here and for sharing this space with each and every one of you. So, mahalo.
Tehina, Kaliko, you guys have closing mana'o?
You know, no one can follow that, to be honest. Follow our ea mahu vapor, all of that. But I want to mahalo everyone for an amazing panel and this opportunity to learn from each other. And I think a big takeaway that I am remembering, or at least thinking about, is that we can only identify ourselves, and especially as a people in Ohana and Kaiāulu, a people, it's our choice, it's our language that can identify us as a people. And I really enjoyed learning about the MVP FAF Plus. I hope I pronounced that correctly, because that is a way for us as a Moana Nui Akea to identify ourselves without the language of the colonizer or the haole leo. So yeah, mahalo nui, yeah, ka koa pau, loa la, yeah, mahalo.
Kaliko?
Yes, to echo what's been said, mahalo for having me, and it's been really energizing to share space and time with everyone. And I think my biggest takeaway is really thinking about desires and the expression of desire that was mentioned at the beginning and at the end of the film, and how we embody those desires, and to remember that desire is essential to our autonomy and therefore to our freedom and to ea, and that it's all interconnected.
Okay, mahalo. Well, folks, this has been really, really wonderful. If you guys want to ask, you folks want to ask questions, some more questions to our panelists, you can email me at wait, no, that's the wrong one. Cambern k@hawaii.edu. Let me know who you want to direct your question to, and I can email it to them and then respond back to you. So mahalo you folks, mahalo panelists for all your brilliant mana'o. And
Mahalo everyone.
Yeah.
Mahalo my sisters, brothers,
sisters.
We gotta see, there we go, the English language limiting us.
Yeah, mahalo kākou Apollo for having this conversation because it's super important and we love making space like this. So
yeah, e ora mau I ka māhūi. Ke.
Mahalo everyone.
Mahalo. Ahui ho kākou. Mahalo.